Ouais, salut les potes, aujourd'hui on va faire une nouvelle vidéo sur storybooth. Aujourd'hui on va réacter 4 vidéos. Là, commentez si vous avez aimé le premier, le deuxième, le troisième ou quatrième. Abonnez, likez dans ma chaîne et dans l'autre chaîne aussi. Et prenez des popcorn, quelque chose à boire et on va commencer la vidéo. La première c'est I didn't like who my dad really was. Maintenant on va commencer. Voilà. Et voilà.
My story begins with my parents. They were both addicted to drugs and alcohol, and they lived in a small house. They got married after being together for maybe 2 to 3 years. My mother became pregnant with me, and she truly believed that I was a blessing from God. So she got completely clean off any drugs and booze, and she also got a job working really hard to pay for me and herself while she was still pregnant. In the months she was clean, she became upset and distant with my father as he continued drinking and using drugs. They argued all the time, and my father didn't pay any bills, nor did he have a job, nor did he quit any of his habits. But nonetheless, they stayed together. My mother then gave birth to me. My father missed due to his drug use and informed my mother at the hospital that he lost the house because, well, he didn't pay any of the bills for months on end. They were separated but still legally together. Up until 2009, when my father went to prison for a violent crime, he was sentenced to a 10-year sentence with parole after having served 5. So I grew up without him. I was almost in the 5th grade by the time he was released for good behavior. Then he tried to get back into my life. I started going to his house sometimes when he asked me on the weekends. He remarried only a few days after being out of prison, and I didn't like that. I didn't like being around his house because, as far as I knew, my dad, his wife, and his wife's family were just strangers to me. When I was a kid growing up without him, I really missed my dad, like, a lot, even though I didn't remember him at all, and I felt guilty for looking at him as a stranger. And then, across a 3-year period of middle school, my father showed his true colors. The first incident that made me lose a lot of respect for him was when he continued having marital problems with his new wife. They would argue a lot, and they both said hurtful things, and she even tried to grab me to keep me in the house when they argued, and my father tried to stay at a hotel with me for the night. Then, the second time, he had divorced and remarried once again only a few days after his divorce. This woman already had 3 children, and I was obviously ignored for the other kids when I went to his house. Then, they also had marital problems. He would tell me to put my shoes on and jacket so they could leave, and then he would go back to argue, and then he would tell me to put my shoes and my jacket on and go back to argue, and this would continue for almost the whole night. Now, they both have 2 more kids, and my father is struggling to provide for them. And at one point, I realized the same thing had been going on for almost 4 years of his freedom after being out of jail. So 13-year-old me decided to stop going to my father's house. I would make excuses and only go when I had to, and my father would continue to get angry that I wouldn't go. So now, nearly a year after making excuses not to go, the next time he asked me to go to his house, I'm going to say no and explain why I'm never going to his house ever again.
Si vous comprenez pas, allez sur storybooth et faites les sous-titres en français et voilà. Et la vidéo s'est terminée pour la première vidéo. Maintenant, on a la deuxième vidéo. Ça s'appelle I never thought this would happen to my family. Et on va le regarder. Et voilà.
Dad wasn't there because he had work. He worked as a police officer and sometimes had to work night shift. As we were at church, I heard that my good friend Ryder's dad wasn't doing too well. He had lung cancer and he was in the hospital. He wasn't going to be here much longer, and it was just now hitting Ryder that he wasn't going to have his dad anymore. And it was really sad, and I felt awful for Ryder. But the thought crossed my mind, what if that was someone in my family? But I just brushed it off, thinking that would never happen to us. Later we got home and it was pretty late, so I decided to try to go to bed. Later that night, I heard somebody stomping through the house. I went out of my room to find my mom in a panicked voice at the door. There was an officer standing outside our door. That wasn't our dad. And then I heard crying in the living room. I was scared to go in there to see what had happened. I saw my aunt and 3 sisters all crying in the living room. That's when I knew something was up and became worried. She told me my dad had been shot.
No.
I was shocked. news, but I didn't think it would ever happen here. Later we were told he was okay, but he would have to have a major surgery, and we didn't know if he was walking again. This scared me. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what it would be like if my dad couldn't walk. I didn't know what it would be like for him to lose his leg. It would be tough on us. It would be hard. All of our family began to pray and prayed and waited hours and hours to get more updates. And I was so scared. And we soon heard the ring off the phone. We pounced on it to hear what they had to say. They said he was extremely lucky. The bullet went in the side of his kneecap, missing all bone. It was only 25 centimeters away from the main artery. If we hit that artery,
C'est pas bien. Et voilà. La deuxième vidéo c'est terminé. On a déjà fait 2 vidéos. Si vous avez aimé les 2 vidéos qu'on a regardé depuis maintenant, likez, commentez 1 ou 2. Maintenant on va regarder le 3e vidéo. Et c'est I did the wrong things after being bullied. C'est en anglais encore. Et l'autre vidéo, ça va être I survived extreme bullying. D'abord le 3e. Et voilà.
When I was in middle school, I got bullied really bad. People just picked on me. And it stayed like that for about 3 years. I was bullied mercilessly. I was called names and stuff got thrown at me, and people would write mean names on the bathroom walls and call me horrible stuff. And it got to the point where it got physical. I was actually beaten up by multiple people when I was walking down the hallway for literally no reason. And my parents did everything that they could do, but the principals and the teachers just didn't seem to care enough, and nothing ever really got done to stop it. It was a terrible time for me, tragic and traumatizing, and I was scared. I hated going to school. I didn't want to be there. I honestly was depressed and afraid. It was very stressful and difficult for me. But when I got into the 9th grade, things changed. I got a new state of mind. I wouldn't allow myself to be bullied. And what I mean by that is I went crazy. I started fighting people. I felt disrespected. I would go nuts, cussing them out, screaming at them, threatening them. I was constantly in trouble. Getting in-school suspension, getting sent home. My parents were always being called. Got to the point where the school literally told my mom, your daughter is going to end up in jail. We don't know what to do. They recommended sending me to an alternative school. My mom, however, didn't feel like that was the appropriate response, and she got me into therapy. Unfortunately, honestly, my rage lasted for about 2.5 years, and I honestly don't even know how I had friends. I can't imagine that I was a good person to be around. I mean, I was always being rude to somebody. It was just a not so good time in my life. It took me a long time, but I finally realized that the reason why I was doing what I was doing was out of fear of ever having to be bullied and treated like that again. The fear of that embarrassment, the fear of that emotional trauma. I didn't want anyone to look at me as weak. I didn't want anyone to view me as someone to pick on or a pushover ever. So I just went crazy and I lashed out at anyone, and me doing that turned me into the people who bullied me. Even though it took years, I changed and matured, and therapy did start to help once I started realizing why I was acting the way that I was acting, and that it wasn't changing anything. It was just making me into a monster. And the lesson is just because someone does something to you doesn't mean doing it back makes you any better than them. There's always a healthier way to cope with things.
Et voilà. À l'école, Ne faites pas ça comme les enfants viennent de faire à ces filles. Parce que ce n'est pas bien. Et après, il y aura pas très bien de choses qui va se passer. Et voilà. Donc, vous avez le quatrième vidéo. I survived action bullying. Et voilà. On va regarder. Story pour stars. Abonnée, non,
Wake up in fear that people were going to pick on me at school, and fear that people were going to beat me at school, and I thought it was never going to end. When I was 12 years old, this is when it got real. I had to file restraining orders on people. I had to file lawsuits against people because at the end of the day, your feelings are the things that matter. It eventually escalated to the highest extent where I would trap myself in my room 12 hours a day, not eat, not drink, not talk to any of my family members, and just sit in my own sorrow feeling. This eventually escalated to the point where I was self-harming. I was not taking care of myself. I was very self-conscious. I didn't want anyone to see me. I didn't want anyone to talk to me or even look at me. It was very, very, very intimidating by everyone. I locked myself in my room and started making YouTube videos. I made my first video, then my second, then my third, then my fourth. And soon enough, I started gaining a following on YouTube because people knew the way I talked, people knew the way I acted, and it was an escape for me. When people found out that I was only 14, this is when shit hit the fan. It was crazy, not from boys, but from young girls my age. I realized I had a voice, a point of view, and I could also earn a living about posting my videos, which was the most insane thing because when I first started YouTube, I didn't even know you could make a dime. My parents found out that I was in market and one of my followers recognized me. This is when the cat was out of the bag. I had to tell my parents what I was doing and that people were following me and people looked up to me. They took it literally and thought people were actually following me. LOL. Now I've come to the realization that I can do much more than earn a good living with my social media accounts. But I can tell my story so other young girls and boys and LGBT friends know they too have a voice and people will listen. People are not victims. We are strong, powerful souls that can handle a lot. I don't have any answers or solutions that will stop bullying, but I do know that for all of us that have been bullied, we must use our experience and our voice to help others. And for my brothers and sisters in the world who have experienced bullying, I found out that the only way to light up a dark room is to light a match. You can't fight darkness with light, only with light. But show love. I am Suivez. Every single painful thing that happens to you in your life is to go give greatness. Before I go, I wanted to give you some statistics on bullying and suicide, which are very alarming. And I thought they would be good to just kind of add in here. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among young people, resulting in about 4,400 deaths per year. Over 14% of high school students have considered suicide and almost 7% have actually attempted. Bullying victims are between 2 to 9 times more likely to consider suicide than non-victims.
C'est fini les gars. Et voilà les gars, pour aujourd'hui c'est fini. Commentez si vous voulez voir encore. Et commentez quelle vidéo vous avez aimé, le premier, le deuxième, le troisième ou le quatrième. Et je vais vous voir dans une autre vidéo.